In the winter of 1911, the villagers of Samurai followed their daily routines, working their fields and closing their doors before dark. Then the animals began to die. Strange tracks appeared in the snow, and the nights became eerily quiet. One howl from the ridge was enough to warn them that something new was hunting in their valley. They were not ready for what came out of the darkness. Before we continue, please let us know where you're watching from. Thank you. I arrived in Samurai in the autumn of 1911 when the first frosts remained on the fields through the morning. The train dropped me off in a larger town, and from there I rode in a small cart pulled by a tired horse. Woods, fields, and bare vineyards passed by in a steady blur. I had accepted the position of schoolmaster because I wanted steady work in a quiet village. The inspector's letter had only mentioned isolation and harsh winters. The driver, a man named Henri, hunched over the reins and smoked as he drove. For a long time, he said nothing. Only when we left the main road and turned onto a narrow lane under tall pine trees did he speak. "Do you know why the last schoolmaster left, monsieur?" he asked. "I was told he got married and moved to Limoges," I said. Henri made a short sound that was not quite a laugh. "That is the story they put in writing," he said. "People prefer it." The wheels bumped over ruts. The trees stood close on either side. No birds called. "What really happened?" I asked. "He found one of his students in the ditch by the forest," Henri said. "Her throat was torn out. They said it was a wolf. Men from 3 villages searched the hills and killed nothing. After that, he stayed a few weeks, then left before dawn and never came back." He spoke without raising his voice, but his hands shook slightly on the reins. The inspector had not written a word about a dead child. "There are wolves everywhere in these regions," I said. "There are," Henri answered. "Old people in Samurai talk about more than wolves. If a cow dies in the night or a child falls ill, they give it the same name." He fell quiet again. We passed a weathered stone cross at the edge of a field. Someone had left dried herbs at its base. "What name?" I asked. Henri watched the road. "They say the wolf walks upright," he said at last. "They say it wears a man's skin by day." I came from a town with gas lamps, libraries, and a public reading room. At the teacher's college, we spoke of science and progress. I told myself that Henri was repeating village gossip that always returned when something bad happened. Even so, in the gray light under the pines, his words settled heavily. When the forest thinned, the land opened into a shallow valley. Small fields lay on the slopes, divided by stone walls and hedges. At the center, on a low rise, stood Sarai, a cluster of stone houses, a crooked street, a little square, and a church whose bell tower leaned slightly. Thin smoke rose from a few chimneys. Henri stopped in front of the inn. A woman in an apron came out, wiping her hands. Her hair was graying, tied in a knot. Her forearms were strong. "Jean, this is Monsieur Delorme, the new schoolmaster," Henri said. "He has arrived in an unlucky year." "Enough of that," she said, though her eyes studied me. "Monsieur, your room is ready. We heard you would come before All Saints' Day." I climbed down with my case. The village smelled of damp earth, smoke, and animals. A few children watched from doorways and slipped away when Jean turned her head. "Come in," she said. "You can eat while we send word to the mayor." The main room of the inn was low and dim, with blackened beams and a wide hearth. A pot hung over red coals. 2 men sat at a table near the fire with a jug between them. They stopped talking when I entered. "This is him," Jean said. "The new master." The men nodded. One was tall and lean with a sharp nose and a scar on his chin. The other was shorter and broad-shouldered with rough hands and pale eyes. Jean introduced them. "Marcel hunts in the hills," she said. "Etienne works the Gualand." Marcel rose to shake my hand. "Welcome," he said. "You will find the children here stubborn. When work is needed, they vanish into the fields. I will try to make the classroom worth the trouble," I replied. Etienne gave me a slow look. "You chose a bad year," he said. "The harvest failed, and the beast came back. People think God no longer listens to us." Jean set a bowl of stew and bread in front of me and cut him off. "Let him eat first," she said. "There is time enough for talk." "I'm not so easy to frighten," I said, although my voice did not sound as firm as I wanted. Marcel's mouth tightened in a thin smile. Jean was still clearing the hearth when the mayor arrived. Monsieur Gua was a stout man with a neat mustache and a red nose. He took my hand in both of his and spoke in a strong, practiced tone. "Samurai is honor, monsieur," he said. "The Republic remembers even small villages." "I'm pleased to serve," I answered. Gua sat and poured himself wine. "You came by the Pine Road," he said. "Then you know how close the forest lies. At night, it is worse than in daylight. Still, we are not children. There have been incidents, but we will not lose our judgment." Marcel's jaw tightened. Etienne stared at the table. "Some sheep, a cow, one death," Gua said. "The prefect sent gendarmes. They went back with empty hands. People here talk of curses and monsters. That is why we need a good school. You will give our children something better than old tales." "I will try," I said. "Classes begin Monday," he replied. "Until then, rest. If you hear howling, stay inside. The hunters are out. There is no cause for alarm." He said the last words with careful emphasis. That night, I lay in a narrow bed under the roof. The mattress smelled of straw. Through the small window, I saw the dark line of the opposite hill and the pale curve of the road. The village lay quiet. I told myself that the unease in my chest came from the journey and the strangeness of new surroundings. I went over the names in my mind to steady myself. Henri in the cart, Jean at the inn, Marcel the hunter, Etienne the farmhand, Monsieur Gua. I tried to picture the classroom I had not yet seen. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw instead a ditch at the edge of Forest Road and a child's desk with no one sitting at it. The first howl came after I had put out the lamp. It rose from the direction of the forest, long and harsh, then broke in a way that did not sound like the calls I had heard from wolves on past hunts. A second answered from farther down the valley. A third sounded closer, somewhere beyond the last houses. I lay still, listening. Below, a door creaked. I heard quick footsteps, Jean's low voice, and the heavy scrape of a bolt. Then only the wind against the tiles and the blood in my ears. I had heard wolves before. Their howls had a rough rhythm. These cries carried a strange rise and fall that made the skin on my arms prickle. I told myself it was only fear and weariness. I pulled the blanket up and forced my muscles to loosen. The howls grew fainter, drifting toward the hills. At last, without any clear moment when wakefulness ended, I slid into a hard, dreamless sleep with my hands still clenched in the blanket. I woke to the smell of bread and coffee and the sound of someone chopping wood behind the inn. For a brief moment, I forgot the howls. I was only a man in a new village with a day to prepare for his first class. Then memory came back in a sharp rush, and I lay still, listening. The valley was quiet. No cries, no voices in alarm. Light came pale through the small window. Downstairs, Jean moved briskly between tables. A pot steamed on the hearth. She set a bowl and cup in front of me without asking. "You heard them," she said. "Yes," I answered. "Are they always that loud?" "Sometimes they come closer," she said. "Last winter, they circled the Gua barn. The sheep would not calm for days." She looked at my face. "You still have time to go back to the town," she said. "The inspector would find another place for you." It sounded almost like concern, not mockery. "I signed a contract," I said. "Children here need a school as much as in the city. Howls will not send me away." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Words are easy in daylight," she said. "Wait until the first snow." After breakfast, I followed the main street uphill toward the school. The houses were close together near the inn, then spread apart. Chickens scratched in yards. A woman hung linen on a line, glancing often at the forest. Two boys rolled a hoop and stopped to stare at me. When I nodded, they ducked their heads and ran off. The school stood on a slight rise at the far end of the village near the open fields. It was a plain stone building with two narrow windows and a small bell over the door. Behind it sat a teacher's house, low and square, with a fenced garden. Both needed paint. Still, when I stepped inside the empty classroom, I felt a small lift of satisfaction. There were 3 rows of benches, a blackboard, and a map of France with the new departments marked in neat lines. Dust lay thick on the desks. Chalk pieces rested in a metal tray. The last schoolmaster had left in haste. A book lay open on the front table, its pages curled. I opened the windows, swept, and aired the room. As I wiped the blackboard, I pictured the faces that would sit in front of me. The villages I had known as a boy had been noisy, full of shouts and quarrels. Here, even in daylight, there was a restraint I could not name. Near midday, a knock sounded on the doorframe. Marcel leaned there, his cap in his hand. "We'll want you at the church," he said. "The council meets before the feast day. They want you to hear what they will tell the people." "I thought a schoolmaster answered to the inspector, not the mayor," I said. "In the books, yes," he replied. "Out here, you answer to whoever can send you meat in winter or leave you only potatoes." He said it without hostility, just as a fact. We walked together down the street toward the square. A bell clanged once, twice, then stopped. Clouds had thickened. The forest on the distant slope looked darker. A few villagers moved quickly about their tasks, eyes lowered. At the church door, Etienne stood with his cap crushed in his hands, speaking to an older woman wrapped in a thick shawl. Her back was bent, but her eyes were sharp. She broke off when she saw me. "This is Madame Fournier," Marcel said quietly. "She remembers every bad year from 60 years back. When she speaks, people listen." Madame Fournier took my measure with a steady look. "You are the new master," she said. "You think letters and numbers can drive away what walks out there. I think fear grows in ignorance," I said. "If children learn to think, they may not see monsters everywhere." "Not everywhere," she said. "Only where they are. Be careful you do not teach them to doubt what can kill them." She turned and went into the church without another word. Inside, the air smelled of wax and damp stone. Light entered through small windows set high. The painted saints on the walls were faded. At the front, near the altar, stood Gua, the priest, and two older men I had not yet met. They broke off their low conversation when we approached. "Ah, Monsieur," Gua said, "we meet to agree on how we speak of recent events, especially before the feast. Panic helps no one. You understand?" The priest, Father Lauren, was thin with hollow cheeks and serious eyes. His cassock hung loosely on his frame. "People come to me with their fears," he said. "They speak of curses, of bargains with things in the dark. I tell them God does not abandon his flock. Yet each new death makes it harder." "How many deaths?" I asked. There was a brief silence. "One man in summer," said one of the elders, a cooper named Simon, "found in the marsh with his chest open. Then the girl by the road, as you have heard. And animals, too many to count. Wolves attack livestock," I said. "That is not new. These wounds are not like bites," Marcel said quietly. "I have hunted wolves all my life. I know what their teeth do. What we found is not the same." Gua spread his hands in a soothing gesture, though his thumb rubbed his palm in small circles. "The prefect says wolves," he said. "We say wolves. That is the end of it. If anyone speaks of other things, we call it superstition. Do you agree, monsieur?" I understood what he wanted. If the schoolmaster laughed at tales of werewolves, others might follow. "I will teach what the manuals say," I replied. "I will not repeat stories that frighten children for no reason." "That is enough," he said. "We ask only that you do not give weight to old legends." Father Lauren looked toward the door where a patch of pale sky showed through. "Legends begin somewhere," he murmured, "but we will not argue about that now." When we left the church, the square had filled with people bringing offerings for the coming feast. Baskets of potatoes, jars of preserved fruit, sacks of grain. Women clustered in small groups, talking in low voices. Men checked the wheels of carts and the harnesses of animals. Each person seemed to watch both the church and the forest. As we stepped down onto the worn stones, a shout came from the far edge of the village. A boy of about 12 ran toward us, hair wild, breathing hard. His name was Luke, as I would later learn. At that moment, he was simply a child with terror in his eyes. "They got another one," he gasped, "at the ragman's field near the stream. It's torn to pieces." People around us fell silent. Someone dropped a sack. Grain spilled onto the stones. "What did you see?" Marcel asked, gripping the boy's shoulders. "Blood in the snow," Luke said. "The sheep are dead. Not eaten, just lying there. My father sent me to call you." His face went gray. He turned to the priest. "Go back inside," he told Father Lauren. "Ring the bell. Bring people in. Tell them to pray." He paused, then looked at me. "You may come if you wish," he said. or you may stay here where it is safe." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to retreat into the dim church and pretend this was all gossip. Another part, smaller but harder, wanted to see with my own eyes. I knew that if I stayed behind, I would always doubt the truth of what was told. "I will come," I said. We followed Luke down a narrow path between houses, past gardens and sheds, toward the lower fields. Others trailed behind at a distance, murmuring in small groups. The path sloped toward the stream where a thin sheet of ice had formed in the shallows. The ragman's field lay beyond, a poor patch of ground enclosed by a broken fence. The smell reached us before the sight did. It was sharp and heavy, a mixture of blood, wet wool, and something else I could not name. Marcel's steps slowed. Etienne, who had joined us silently, crossed himself in a hurried gesture. When I stepped into the field, my stomach clenched, for sheep lay scattered near the fence. Their bellies were open, ribs showing pale in the cold air. Their legs jutted at awkward angles. The snow around them was stained dark. "They did not eat," Marcel said in a flat tone. "This is not hunger." He knelt by the nearest carcass and examined the wounds with careful hands. I stood back, breathing shallowly. I had seen slaughtered animals before, but always in an orderly setting with knives and purpose. This was different. There was a wildness in the way the bodies were thrown about, as if something had moved through them in one swift storm of motion and then left. Luke watched me, perhaps to see whether the new schoolmaster would faint. I forced myself to look at each animal in turn, to note the pattern of the gashes, the torn flesh, the marks in the snow. I told myself that if I paid attention, I might find some detail that made sense of it, something that could be named and measured. "Tracks," Etienne said hoarsely. Near the far corner of the field where the fence sagged, the snow was churned. Prints led from the forest edge, crossed the ditch, and entered the enclosure. At first, I thought they were wolf tracks, large and deep. But when I stepped closer, I saw that some marks were not shaped like an animal's paw at all. They were elongated, with a narrower rear and a wider front, as if something had pressed down with toes. Deep claw marks scored the snow ahead of them. Between these prints lay tracks that looked almost like a man's barefoot, but too long, with the ends spread into points. "Wolves do not step like this," Marcel said. His voice was even, but the skin around his mouth was tight. "Nor bears. I have seen bears in the higher valleys. Their claws marked differently." Will looked away. "You see what fear does," he said sharply. "We stand in a bloody field, and our minds twist every mark into a nightmare. We say wolves. We will tell the prefect the same. Anything else invites ridicule." He stared at me. "You agree, monsieur?" Behind him, Luke's eyes were fixed on my face. Etienne's jaw clenched. Jean, who had followed at a distance and now stood by the fence, waited without speaking. The choice they were asking for became clear to me then. If I echoed Gua, I would stand with the part of the village that wanted to hold on to order. If I sided with the hunters and the old woman with her sharp gaze, I would give weight to the terror already spreading among them. "I have never seen tracks like these," I said slowly. "I also know that fear can trick the eyes. What I can say is that calling it a wolf does not change what killed these sheep." It was not the answer anyone wanted. For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the weak rush of the stream and the faint clatter of the church bell beginning to ring in the distance. Marcel rose from the carcass and wiped his hands on the snow. "Whatever it is, it came from the forest," he said. "It will come again. We need more than prayers and words." He looked at Gua. "We hunt tonight," he said, "with or without the council's blessing." I followed them back toward the village with the cold pressing through my coat. The bell in the church tower rang steadily, calling people in. The sound drifted down the slope and over the fields. It should have felt reassuring, but the steady toll only tightened the unease in my stomach. Marcel walked ahead, eyes on the tree line, as if expecting movement. Etienne stayed close to him, shoulders rigid. Luke lingered near me, still breathing hard, as though afraid that if he let distance grow between us, whatever had crossed the field would return. When we reached the first houses, people stepped out to question us. Faces lined with worry searched our expressions. We'll push through them and raise his voice. "It was wolves," he said. "Nothing more." Those who wish to pray should go to the church. Hunters will keep watch tonight." Several nodded quickly, eager for any explanation that allowed them to return to their routines. Others exchanged looks filled with doubt. A few children clung to their mother's skirts, staring at the hunters' bloodied hands. Jean was waiting near the inn with her arms crossed. "Wolves do not kill like that," she said quietly to me. "They take what they can eat. They do not leave the rest as a warning." Her calm tone unsettled me more than a shout would have. "I know," I said, "but if I say that openly, it will cause more fear." "Fear already fills this valley," she replied. "Naming it will not change its presence." She turned to Marcel, who was checking the straps on his rifle. "You will need help," she said. "We will," he replied, "but not from everyone. Some of the men panic too easily." "I did not say I would join you," she said, "but I can cook for those who will watch. They cannot hunt on empty stomachs." Her matter-of-fact tone steadied the men around her. Marcel nodded in gratitude. By late afternoon, the sky darkened enough to make people hurry through their tasks. Smoke rose from chimneys and shutters closed early. I spent several hours arranging the classroom, writing Monday's lesson on the board, and placing the children's copybooks in careful stacks. When my work was done, I lingered at the window. Snow fell softly in uneven flurries, melting as it touched the ground. I thought of the tracks in the field. I tried to put them out of my mind, but every time I closed my eyes, the shape of them returned. I searched for some rational explanation: a large dog, a wounded animal with a strange gait, a trick of thawing snow. Each possibility fell apart when I remembered their size and spacing. At dusk, Jean called me down for supper. The inn's common room was lit by 2 oil lamps and the glow of the hearth. A pot of stew simmered slowly. 3 hunters I had not met before sat quietly with bowls in front of them, their boots muddy from the hills. All had rifles beside their chairs. Marcel entered last, bringing a gust of cold air with him. "We set traps near the lower ridge," he said. "If anything crosses tonight, we will hear it." "Are these men all you have?" I asked. "For others watch the upper road," he said. "The rest are either too old or refuse to go out after dark." He pulled up a chair and filled his bowl. "You could stay here," he said to me. "No one will think less of you." I thought of my narrow bed upstairs. I pictured lying there, listening to the howls grow closer. The thought sickened me. "I will come," I said. Marcel studied me for a moment. "You do not need a rifle," he said. "Stay behind us. If we tell you to run, you run." I agreed. After supper, the hunters prepared to leave. Each checked his weapon, pack, and lantern. Jean handed them small cloth bundles with bread and dried meat. "For strength," she said. "Do not waste it." The men thanked her. Even in their grim mood, they understood that she cared for every life in the village. Outside, the night had fully settled. A thin frost crackled under our boots. The moon had not yet risen, leaving the valley in darkness broken only by our lanterns. We walked past the last houses and down toward the lower fields. The silence was almost complete, broken only by our breathing and the soft clink of metal against cloth. At the edge of the field, Marcel lifted his lantern and examined the snow. "No new tracks," he murmured. "Good." He pointed to a flat rock where I could sit if I grew tired. "You stay behind this line of stones," he said. "We will circle the perimeter. If anything moves, stay low and do not shout." The men spread out. Their lanterns formed a loose arc around the field. The stream nearby murmured faintly. For a long while, nothing happened. My mind wandered in nervous loops. I counted my breaths. I listened to the crunch of the hunters' boots as they patrolled. The cold pressed into my hands until the skin stiffened. I shifted to keep blood moving. A distant howl broke the stillness. It came from the forest, faint but unmistakable. It rose quickly, held, then dropped in a broken pattern that made the hair on my neck lift. Marcel stopped moving. The light of his lantern swung slowly. "That is the same voice as last night," he said. "It is called something." Another howl answered from farther down the valley. This one was shorter, sharper. It did not sound like any wolf I had heard. The men tensed. One of the younger hunters, a man named Julian, moved closer to Marcel. "Should we fire as a warning?" he whispered. No, Marcel said. If we scare it now, it will return where we cannot see. The howls died away. The stillness that followed felt heavier than the sound. Time passed without movement. I began to think the night would end with only fear and no discovery. Yet a part of me knew that the silence itself carried a warning. I must have lost track of the hour. The lanterns flickered low. Frost thickened on the grass. I shifted my weight again and again to keep warm. Then a soft crack sounded near the stream. Every head turned. Marcel raised his lantern. Its light reached only a short distance, leaving the trees in shadow. "Something is down there," he said quietly. Etienne crouched beside him, rifle raised. Another crack came, this time closer, a branch being pushed aside, a footstep heavier than a fox or wolf. Without speaking, Marcel moved toward the stream, the other men forming a slow semicircle. He held his lantern high. The light slid over reeds, the thin crust of ice, and the pale trunks of trees. Nothing moved. "Do you smell it?" Julien whispered. At first I did not. Then it reached me, a sharp, thick scent of wet fur, blood, and something older I could not name. It coated the back of my throat. Marcel gestured for the men to spread farther. I stayed behind them, my heart pounding against my ribs. The rustling came again. "Hold," Marcel said. The reeds parted. A shape stepped into the lantern glow. At first, I could not understand what I saw. Its height was wrong. Its posture was wrong. Its outline shifted between what my mind knew and what it refused to accept. Coarse fur covered its limbs. Its shoulders were narrow, but rising high. The head was long, the jaw hung open, with breath that steamed into the cold. Its eyes reflected the lantern light in a pale, fixed glare. It did not move like a wolf or man. Its steps pushed the ground in heavy, deliberate motions. Julien made a strangled sound. The creature lifted its head and looked directly at him. Then it let out a single bark-like sound that hit me like a physical blow. "Stand firm," Marcel said, voice low but steady. The creature shifted its weight as if measuring us. My breath caught. Then it took a step forward. The creature's forward step pushed the reeds aside with a slow, deliberate movement. Its chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Its gaze moved from Julien to Marcel, then to the rest of us. Every part of its posture suggested control, not confusion or panic. Marcel raised his rifle, but did not fire. "Do not shoot unless it charges," he said. His voice stayed calm, but I saw tension in his jaw. The other hunters tightened their grips on their weapons. Julien's hands shook so badly that the barrel of his rifle tapped against a stone. The creature stood fully clear of the reeds now. The lantern light revealed the thickness of its limbs, the roughness of its fur, and the way one of its forearms hung slightly lower, as though it carried more weight on that side. Its breath came in heavy bursts that sent small plumes into the cold air. It stared at us without fear. I felt my legs weaken. I tried to steady myself by focusing on details. The way its fingers ended in long points, the dark patches of dried blood on its lower jaw, the uneven shape of its ears. Each detail only increased my dread. Etienne took a slow step back, careful not to make noise. His gaze stayed trained on the creature. "We cannot outrun it," he whispered. "I know," Marcel said. The creature tilted its head. The movement was slow and deliberate, as though it were studying us with the same attention we gave it. For a moment, the entire field held its breath. Even a stream behind it seemed to fade from my hearing. Then a shout broke the stillness. Luke, who had been told to stay behind with the others near the village edge, had followed anyway. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, running toward us without caution. Before I could shout for him to stop, he slipped on the frost and fell forward with a sharp cry. The creature's head snapped toward him. "Get him!" Marcel shouted. Julien dropped his lantern and sprinted toward the boy. The sudden movement broke the fragile stillness. The creature growled. The sound vibrated through the ground. Julien grabbed Luke by the arm and pulled him up, but the creature began to move toward them with measured steps that grew faster with each stride. "Back!" Marcel yelled. "Back to the stones!" He fired a shot into the air, not at the creature, but high above it. The blast echoed down the valley. The creature halted. Its chest heaved with focused breaths. It looked from Marcel to the boy, and then let out a short, harsh sound that did not resemble any animal call I knew. Julian reached us with Luke in tow. The boy clung to him, trembling violently. The creature took another half step, then stopped again. Its body tensed in a way that made every muscle visible under its coarse fur. Marcel kept his rifle trained on it. "We break for the village," he said without turning his head. "Do not run unless I tell you to." No one argued. We began to move, slow steps, no sudden actions. The creature followed. Its strides matched our pace, always staying just beyond lantern range. Each time we slowed, it slowed. Each time we paused, it paused. The sound of its steps pressed into my bones. Heavy, intentional, measured. It was hurting us. When the first roofs came into view, a bell rang again from the church tower. The sound stretched through the air in long, uneven strokes. Lights flickered behind shutters. Shadows moved inside. The creature stopped at the last field before the village. It watched us walk the final stretch. Then, with a sudden turn, it slipped back toward the forest. Its retreat was silent enough that I strained to hear even a branch crack. Nothing came. Only when it disappeared into the dark did my breath escape in a rush. Luke sobbed quietly in Julian's arms. Marcel lowered his rifle. "We cannot stay out here again," he said. "It is not afraid of us." Etienne wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "It followed our steps like it already knew them," he said. Jean met us at the inn door. She saw Luke's face and pulled him into her arms without a word. Her expression was tight with worry, but not surprise. "You saw it," she said. Marcel nodded. "We saw enough," he answered. Inside, the hunters gathered around the hearth. No one wanted food. No one wanted drink. Their silence carried more weight than any outburst would have. Julian stared at the floor. "It looked at me," he said quietly. "It knew I was the one who moved first." "You are alive," Jean said. "That is what matters." I sat with my back against the wall, hands still trembling. My mind replayed the creature's measured steps, its steady gaze, the way it had mirrored our movements without effort. "It let us go," I said. Marcel shook his head. "It did not let us go," he said. "It learned us. There is a difference." We did not sleep that night. Each time the wind brushed against the eaves, someone lifted his head. Luke sat wrapped in blankets near the hearth, refusing to close his eyes. Jean stayed awake, moving quietly among us, adjusting the fire, setting water to heat, checking the shutters. Just before dawn, the church bell rang again. 3 short strikes. Gua had arranged a signal with the hunters. 3 strikes meant something was wrong. Marcel rose immediately. "We go," he said. He looked at me. "You do not have to come this time." I stepped forward anyway. "I will come," I said. The square was full of people by the time we reached it. Some carried lanterns, others stood in their night clothes. Father Lauren stood at the church steps holding a candle. Gua met us with a pale face. "It took a man," he said. "Old Bertrand behind his barn." A murmur spread through the crowd. "Show us," Marcel said. Gua led the way down a narrow lane to the edge of the village. Frost glimmered on the rooftops. The barn stood open. The ground near it was disturbed. Several villagers knelt there, whispering prayers. When we reached them, they parted. Old Bertrand lay on his back. His eyes were open. His chest was torn in a single brutal strike. Blood had frozen in dark patterns across his coat. His hands still gripped a lantern. The glass was cracked, as though something had struck it hard. Tracks surrounded him, the same prints from the field. Only this time, they led deeper into the village before turning back toward the forest. Marcel crouched over the body. "It is hunting closer," he said. "It is watching how we move." Gua trembled. "What do we tell the people?" he whispered. Marcel stood, his face set. "The truth," he said, "because anything else will kill us faster." He looked toward the forest. "We will hunt again tonight, but next time it will not watch. It will come for us." The villagers stared at him, waiting. "Whatever this is," he said, "it will not stop. Not until we end it." The crowd around Bertrand's body grew thicker as more villagers pushed forward, drawn by the sound of whispered prayers and the grim stillness of the hunters. No one dared to speak above a murmur. Even the children sensed the weight of what lay in the frost. I I tried to read the expressions on the faces around me. Fear, anger, disbelief, but most of all, resignation. They already understood that the boundaries they relied on, the fields, the fences, the night watch, no longer protected them. Marcel pulled a blanket from a nearby cart and covered Bertrand from the neck down. He rested one hand on the old man's shoulder for a brief moment, bowed his head, then stood. "We cannot leave him here," he said. "Take him to the church. The priest will prepare him." Villagers stepped forward without being asked. Two men lifted the body with slow care and carried him toward the square. People parted as they passed. Some crossed themselves, others whispered the man's name. Behind them, a woman I did not know sobbed softly, clutching her shawl to her face. "Who found him?" I asked. "His son-in-law," he said. He heard a sound in the barn. By the time he reached the door, it was too late. "Did he see anything?" "Only movement," he said. "A shape." He said it slipped away before he could even cry out. I looked at the doorway of the barn. Scratches marked the wood, not the kind left by tools or animals. Long, deep, angled with force. My skin tightened. "Tracks go past the well," Etienne said, pointing toward the narrow lane. Marcel knelt near the edge of the frost-dusted road. He traced one of the prints with his glove, studying the depth and angle. "It was not running when it left," he said. "Its steps are too steady." It walked through the village as though it knew no one could stop it. Jean approached then, wrapped in her thick winter coat. Her eyes went to the covered body, then to the hunters' faces. "It will not stop there," she said. "It has taken animals. It has taken a child. Now it has taken a man near his own door. You cannot expect it to give us another night to prepare." "We are not expecting anything from it," Marcel said. "But we will be ready." "How?" she asked. "We hunt before sundown," he said. "All of us, not just a few." Gasps and murmurs rose from the crowd. "You cannot ask the whole village to go into the forest," was said. "They are farmers and craftsmen, not soldiers." "Then we stay here and watch it take us one by one," Marcel replied. "You saw the prince. It walked the length of the lane. It could have tried doors. It could have taken whomever it wanted." His words struck the crowd like cold water. A tall man near the back stepped forward. His cheeks were hollow, and he wore an old hunting coat, mended in several places. "I will go," he said. "If we stay in bed while others fight, we are no better than prey." Another man followed, then a third. Soon others nodded in agreement. Fear lived in their faces, but something else had begun to take shape beneath it. Resolve, faint but growing. Gwa looked overwhelmed. He had never intended to lead men into a forest with rifles and lanterns. He looked at the priest for support. Father Laurent stepped forward, his hands clasped. "If you do this," he said, "you must remain clear in your purpose. Do not go seeking vengeance. Do not let fear guide your actions. Search for the truth of this thing. Do what is necessary, but do not lose yourselves in the process." His voice did not quiver, even though his eyes were shadowed with dread. Marcel nodded. "We will not lose ourselves," he said, "but we will not stand idle either." As the crowd dispersed, I remained near the barn. The tracks in the frost disturbed me more than the body had. They were not just signs of violence. They were signs of familiarity. The creature had walked among us, unhurried, unchallenged. That understanding settled into my chest like a weight. Julien came up beside me. "It moved like it knew where everything was," he said. "It did," I replied. "You think it has been watching us longer than we knew?" I did not answer. I did not need to. The hunters planned to gather at the inn before dusk. Until then, I worked in the schoolhouse, though I found it impossible to concentrate. Every sound outside made me glance toward the window. I tried to write notes for Monday's lesson, but my thoughts drifted and my handwriting came out uneven. I forced myself to stop before the chalk snapped in my hand. By late afternoon, I decided to walk the village to clear my mind. The air was sharp with cold. Smoke rose from chimneys. People spoke in low voices as they gathered firewood or carried water from the well. Mothers pulled their children inside as soon as they saw me. Even the animals seemed restless. Dogs barked intermittently, and a few horses stamped their hooves as though unsettled by some scent I could not detect. When I passed the Gwa house, the mayor stepped out, tightening his coat. His face was strained. "You prepare to hunt," he said. "I can see it in your eyes." Whatever I said before, I cannot stop you now. You saw the tracks, I said. You saw what it did to Bertrand. He exhaled sharply. Reasonable men do not go chasing monsters, he said. But perhaps the time for reason has passed. Will you join us? He looked toward the forest. I am not a hunter, he said, but I will not hide either. If the village goes, I go. It surprised me. For all his attempts to deny what was happening, he had enough pride or guilt to stand with the others. We walked together back to the square in silence. By sundown, 20 men had gathered at the inn. They carried rifles, axes, pitchforks, and lanterns. Their breath clouded in the cold air. Jean stepped out with baskets of bread and cheese. Eat now, she said. You will need strength. No one argued. Marcel addressed the group. We follow the tracks in the forest, he said. We stay together. No one breaks from a group. No one fires unless the shot is clear. If it circles us, we tighten formation. If it flees, we do not chase blindly. You think it will wait for us? Someone asked. No, Marcel said. But it will watch. It will always watch. I stood among the men, my heart pounding. I did not belong there. I knew that, but I cannot step back. If I left now, shame would follow me long after this night. When we moved out, lanterns formed a wavering line along the path. Snow crunched under our boots. The forest grew darker with each step, swallowing our light little by little. By the time we reached the first ridge, the moon had risen, casting pale light across the treetops. The cold deepened. The air smelled of pine, damp earth, and something metallic. Etienne raised a hand. Tracks, he said. Marcel crouched and studied them. Fresh, deep, heading into the darkest part of the woods. Julien swallowed hard. It wants us to follow, he whispered. Marcel stood. We follow anyway. We pressed deeper. Branches closed over our heads. Lanterns flickered against trunks and roots. The silence grew heavier. Every step felt like a step away from safety and closer to something that understood us far too well. Hours passed. The tracks continued. They were never hurried, never frantic. Then Etienne halted again. Marcel, he murmured, using Marcel's full name. It has changed direction. Marcel studied the ground. It is circling. A realization passed through the group like a chill. We are not hunting it, Julien said. It is hunting us. Marcel did not deny it. Keep formation, he said. Lanterns up. We moved again, but fear seeped into every step. Then from somewhere behind us, a twig snapped. Another crack followed, then a low sound between a growl and a breath. Every lantern swung toward the noise. The trees shifted with shadow. Something moved just beyond the light's reach. A second crack echoed through the trees, sharper this time, as if something heavier than any deer or wolf stepped on a frozen branch. The men tightened instinctively, lanterns lifting in a trembling arc. I felt the cold settle deeper into my chest, as though the air itself thickened. Marcel raised his arm for silence. No one dared to breathe loudly. The forest around us seemed to close in, its branches like unmoving watchers. I turned slowly, the lantern held just high enough to light the ground at my feet. The space beyond its reach looked endless. Another sound came, not a snap this time, but more like a slow, steady pressure on snow and leaves, as if something large placed its weight with precision. It is behind us, Etienne whispered. It is everywhere, Julien muttered, voice breaking. Marcel shook his head. No, one set of tracks, one creature. But even he sounded unsure. The lantern light flickered over the trees again, and I thought I saw movement, a brief shift, a darker shape behind a trunk. As I stared, trying to understand whether it was shadow or figure, a low, rough exhale drifted through the air. The creature's breathing. Close. Marcel took 2 steps forward, raising his rifle. We hold, he said. Do not break. As soon as he spoke, a thud came from our left. The men turned, rifles lifting. Another thud echoed behind us. The forest erupted in cracking branches. For a frantic moment, I believed we were surrounded by more than one creature. But each sound came in fragmented, deliberate bursts, as if a single thing was testing our direction and reactions. The creature was moving fast. It was circling, Something scraped the bark of a tree near me. I swung my lantern. Deep claw marks scarred the trunk fresh. The resin still gleamed in the faint light. A shout burst from the back of the group. "It's there!" Everyone spun. A large shape darted between two trees, too fast to see clearly, too quiet for its size. The lanterns caught only glimpses, fur, breath, a curved back disappearing behind a thicket. Julian stumbled backward. "It knows we're scared," he said. "Stay together." Marcel snapped. Lanterns forward. We shifted into a tighter cluster, lanterns raised, rifles outward. But the forest became its ally. Every trunk, shadow, and hollow gave it a place to hide. Every step we took seemed to reveal nothing but more emptiness. A distant howl rose, but not the full, echoing call from nights prior. This was shorter, deeper, a signal, a declaration. It was close. The howl died. Then came silence, more complete than before. "Do not move," Marcel whispered. We froze. Breath clouded the air. Somewhere behind me, I heard someone quietly sobbing into his scarf. Will muttered a prayer under his breath, his voice trembling. Then the forest floor shifted. The creature stepped into the ring of lantern light, its entire shape finally revealed. It stood upright on elongated legs, its shoulders hunched upward, its arms hung low, ending in fingers tipped with curved claws. The fur was matted with dried blood and dirt. Its chest rose and fell in slow breaths. Its face, wolfish but not fully wolf, watched us with an unreadable intensity. The eyes reflected lantern glow in a pale, steady glare. Every man froze. Marcel lifted his rifle slightly. "Hold," he said, but the creature did not advance. It stood, staring at us as though calculating. Its breaths came louder, filling the space between trees with uneven rhythm. No one dared to breathe loudly. No one dared to whisper. Then the creature stepped forward. Julian panicked first. He fired. The shot tore through the quiet, echoing off every trunk. The creature jerked back, not from the impact of the bullet Julian had missed, but from the sudden, uncontrolled action. The men exploded in noise. Lanterns swung, rifles lifted. The creature reacted instantly with a growl that tore through the cold. It lunged into the lantern light. Everything broke at once. The men scattered. Some moved back. Others tried to form a line. Julian fell in the snow. Etienne grabbed him and pulled him up. Wood dropped his lantern. It shattered, spreading oil across the ground as the flames struggled. The creature's hands swept out. One of the hunters, Alan, was hit across the chest. He flew backward with a cry, landing in a heap. His lantern rolled and went dark. "Form up," Marcel yelled, but his voice was drowned by shouts. The creature moved with brutal speed. It leapt toward Marcel. He fired at point-blank range. The shot struck fur, but the creature only staggered before charging again. Marcel dove aside. Its claws slashed into a tree trunk where he had stood an instant before. Another hunter tried to flank it. The creature swiveled and caught him by the arm. I heard a crack. The man screamed. The creature threw him to the ground. The rest of us stumbled backward in a loose ring. Lanterns flickered wildly. Shadows moved too quickly to understand. I held my lantern up, but my hand shook uncontrollably. Each breath felt thin. The creature stood over the injured man, snarling. Then it turned its head. It looked directly at me. A freezing shock went through my body. I could not move. Its gaze held mine, as though weighing me, understanding me, deciding something. Then it stepped forward. I stumbled back. I tripped on a root and fell onto the snow. My lantern tilted and nearly slipped from my hand. The creature advanced, closing the distance in long strides. "Hey!" Marcel's shout cut through the panic. He stood behind the creature, rifle raised, breath ragged. The creature pivoted. Marcel fired again. The bullet struck its shoulder. This time, the creature roared, a low, deep, furious sound that made my teeth feel as though they were vibrating. It lunged at Marcel. Both disappeared into the dark. "Marcel!" Etienne yelled, running toward the sound. The rest of us followed in staggered fear, lanterns whipping light across the trees. Branches scraped our coats. Snow crunched in frantic rhythms. We heard another roar, then the thud of bodies colliding with the ground. When we reached them, both were down. The creature struggled to rise, hit hard by the shot. Marcel lay on the ground, trying to push himself up with his elbow. Blood ran down his temple. His rifle lay several feet away. The creature planted a hand on the ground to stand. Etienne did not hesitate. He raised his axe and swung. The blade struck the creature's neck. A heavy, brutal sound followed. The creature collapsed. Its body hit the ground with enough force to shake loose snow from the branches above. The forest went still. No growls, no movement, only the ragged breathing of terrified men. Etienne stood over the fallen creature, axe still in hand, chest heaving. Julien trembled beside him, sank to his knees. Marcel lay motionless. I crawled to him. "Are you hurt badly?" I asked. He blinked slowly. "I am alive," he said. His voice was thin but steady. I turned. The creature lay still on its side, breathless, its body a mass of fur and shadow in the lantern light pooling around it. One of the hunters stepped closer. "Is it dead?" he asked. Etienne nodded, though his voice shook. "It is dead." Another man crossed himself. Will looked out at the trees. "No more running," he said. "No more hiding," Etienne replied. We stood over the fallen creature in stiff silence. No one dared to touch it. No one dared to speak loudly. The forest around us felt larger now, as though waiting. The thing that had stalked the valley lay motionless on the ground, but none of us felt victory. For several long moments, we stood over the creature's body without speaking. The cold tightened around us, and the forest felt as if it held its breath. Lantern light cast uneven shadows across the fallen form. Its features no longer seemed to shift with movement or threat. The fur lay flat. The limbs hung motionless. The eyes, once bright with terrible focus, were dull in the frost. Marcel tried to sit up again. I reached under his arm and helped him to lean against a tree. His breaths came slow, but he stayed conscious. "You saved me," he said to Etienne. Etienne shook his head. "You bought us time. That was enough." Several men knelt beside the wounded. Alan still breathed, though shallowly. The hunter whose arm had been broken gritted his teeth against the pain. Julien bound the man's arm as best he could. No one complained or cried out. They worked with quiet urgency, as if afraid to disturb the silence that had settled over the clearing. Guo approached the body. His lantern trembled in his grip, and the light slid over the creature's limbs. He stared with a conflicted expression, part disbelief, part fear, part something more somber. "It looks like a man," he said quietly. "A man with," he hesitated and swallowed, "with something else on top of him." "No man has claws like these," Etienne said. Guo did not argue. Instead, he knelt and stared closer, trying to make sense of the dark fur, the elongated limbs, the broad chest. He lifted the edge of the fur at the shoulder with the tip of a branch, careful not to touch it. "There are scars," he said. "Old ones. Deep ones." Julien stepped closer. "What does that mean?" "It means this thing has lived a long time," Guo said. "Too long." A murmur passed through the men. Some stepped back. Others leaned in. Each man watched the creature as though waiting for it to rise again. But it did not. When Marcel was steady enough to stand with my help, he nodded toward the body. "We take it to the village," he said. "So no one can say we imagined this. So no one can deny what hunted us." Etienne hesitated. "If the villagers see it, some will fall into panic. And if they don't," Marcel said, "we will be chasing shadows for the rest of the winter. People must see what died here." No one disagreed. We bound its limbs with rope cut from packs and placed it on a sled one of the hunters had brought to carry supplies. Even tied down, the creature felt heavy, as though its mass exceeded what its size suggested. I avoided touching it directly. Something about the stillness of its body felt wrong, as though it had weight beyond flesh. The walk back to the village felt longer than our journey into the forest. Lanterns cast faint cones of light across the snow. The wounded leaned on others. Marcel walked slowly, his head lowered, but his steps steady. The creature's body slid and thumped lightly with each rise in the terrain. No one looked away from it for long. When the first roofs appeared through the trees, men ahead shouted. Lights flickered behind shuttered windows. The bell tower silhouette rose above us. As we entered the square, people began to emerge from their homes. At first, they looked relieved to see us return. Then they saw what we dragged behind us. Gasps spread across the crowd. Mothers pulled children behind them. Some men stepped forward, faces pale. Jean pushed through the onlookers and halted when she saw the creature. Her hands tightened into fists, though her face held no fear, only a grave acknowledgement. "So, it is real," she said. "It is dead," Etienne replied. Father Lauren came quickly from the church. He carried a lantern and approached the sled with a mixture of caution and duty. "Cover it," he said. "Children should not see this." Some villagers were already crying into their scarves. Others stared with frozen expressions, as though their minds refused to accept the sight. A few men stepped forward, anger rising in them, not toward the dead creature, but toward the fear they had endured for months. Gore raised his hands. "We will decide together what must be done. But first, let the hunters rest. They fought for all of us." People stepped aside. The wounded were carried to the inn. Jean guided them inside, barking orders without hesitation. Julien supported the man with the broken arm. I helped Marcel into a chair by the hearth, where he shut his eyes and breathed in slow, measured rhythm. The rest of the village remained in the square. The creature's body lay beneath a heavy cloth, its outline unmistakable even with the covering. After some time, the council called everyone to the church. The building filled quickly. The cold air carried the murmurs of villagers who had not slept and would not sleep soon. Father Lauren stood before us. "Whatever it was," he said, "it has been stopped. Tonight, no one died. Tonight, the hunters returned." He paused to let the words settle. "But we must not allow terror to become a new master." We look at each other. We remain a village. We will bury our dead, care for our wounded, and move forward with clear eyes. Guy stepped beside him. "We will send word to the prefect," he said. "Not about wolves, not about superstition. We will tell him that something dangerous lived near our valley and that our hunters ended it. We will speak plainly." He took a slow breath. "And after that, we rebuild." The meeting ended without further debate. People left in small groups, speaking quietly, relieved and exhausted. By dawn, the sun cast pale light across Samurai. The creature's body had been moved to the church shed under lock. The hunters slept in scattered corners of the inn, on benches, in chairs, on the floor. Jean remained awake, tending the wounded, boiling water, cleaning blood from coats and hands. I sat by the window of the inn's common room. The frost on the glass began to melt. Smoke drifted from chimneys. The village looked normal again, if only on the surface. Marcel stirred in his chair across from me. "It's over," he said. "Do you believe that?" I asked. He thought for a long moment. "Yes," he said at last. "Whatever stalked us is dead. The valley is quiet. The forest will be only a forest again." His voice carried certainty, exhausted but certain. I looked out at the snow-covered fields, the roofs touched with morning light, the distant line of trees at the ridge. For the first time since I arrived, the village felt open again, not guarded, not shrinking from the shadows. "Classes begin tomorrow," I said. Marcel nodded. "Life begins again." And so it did. The samurai returned to their work. The hunters healed. The villagers buried Bertrand with solemn respect. The tracks in the fields faded with fresh snowfall. The forest remained still through the winter. I taught my lessons. The children filled the classroom with their quiet laughter. At times I looked toward the tree line, remembering the creature's gaze and the cold weight of that night. But the days passed, and nothing moved there but birds and wind. Spring has arrived. The snow melted. New shoots grew in the fields. The village lived forward. In time, the events of that winter changed into a story the old told by the fire. A real story from a real night, when fear had stepped out of the forest and when the villagers of Samurai faced it together.